Welcome to Stitches in Time, the podcast discussing Doctor Who the way it was meant to be watched, in chronological order, one clip at a time, starting at the Big Bang and ending with the heat death of the universe. I'm Becca, the Matrix Archivist, and I spent the last 12 years of my life meticulously editing the entire televised Doctor Who universe into chronological order.
And I'm Mandy, and I've also had to deal with return to office mandates. And as much as I dislike Zoom, I'm not sure that it's going to work well for the doctors.
Yeah, it is true. We are coming off of a dreadful series of watching the doctors talk to each other on Zoom. And I don't know, it might be a better choice for the doctors than it was for human beings.
For my email marketing job.
Yeah. And also joining us, a very special guest, is Will Overgard, who is a games industry disaster turned streamer. His words, not mine. And someone with the single most flimsy connection on this spinning marble. His words, not mine. Now, I think we need to dive into what you mean by that.
So I have the single flimsiest connection to Doctor Who as a series, as a franchise, in that my cousin's biological father is Tom Baker, and my aunt was on, I think, like 1 or 2 episodes back in the 80s.
Wow.
I should have brought up the little fact sheet. I think I sent it over to Ben. Biakuaz. I found this out last night in the wee hours and nearly peed myself laughing.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna have to really hold my tongue about Tom Baker, aren't I?
No, not at all. I do not get on with my family. You're weapons free.
Well, I want to say you're much better looking than Tom Baker, and I think Andy will probably agree.
You're much less scary looking than he is.
So my aunt played Kari in Terminus a million years ago. And because I figured, she was married to a doctor, and everyone in the UK who is an actor has been on Doctor Who at some point, sometimes unknowingly. It turns out Steve Gallagher originally wanted to call the character Yoni, but was informed that is an Indian slang word for a ladies downstairs mix-up.
Oh yeah, because the Yoni eggs.
Yeah, living in California and having very woo-woo friends, I have heard this before. So I'm glad they didn't go with that.
I was desperately searching for a name and then turned on their favorite PS2 game, Kingdom Hearts, and came up with the name Kyrie instead.
But yeah, I found that out last night that they wanted to call Lisa's character basically a C-bomb, and then didn't.
Wow.
Maybe again, quasi-manic state, but it was so funny. So yeah, that is my wafer-thin, tenuous connection to this whole operation.
Well, you're a celebrity guest. We finally have an official Doctor Who connection on this podcast. That makes us the official Doctor Who podcast.
Yes. And Terminus, I believe, takes place in the 3700s AD. So if you want to come back on this podcast in 20 years, we'd love to have you back.
Done and done.
But today, of course, we are way back in the early days of the universe, not of Doctor Who. We are in 6050 BC, and we're going to talk about...
We're pretty far out from the universe. We were in millions and billions. We're now in thousands.
That is true.
Yeah. We've gone a long way.
We've been in last few episodes of the podcast. We've been in 4-digit years, which I'm very excited about.
We've had enough time for humanity to rise, for them to discover Zoom, and then for them to determine let's not have Zoom, and now we all gotta meet together in the close quarters.
Yeah.
'Twas this year where humans invented meeting up in person a bit, I guess. We'll see what our calendars are like.
Yeah, they were called cavemen because before the invention of meeting up in person, everybody was in their own little caves on their iPads chatting with each other.
That's a science fact.
And of course, we were discussing, if you couldn't, I mean, as any real Doctor Who fan knows, when I say 6050 BC, the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is Day of the Doctor, because I'm sure everybody listening to this is going to be super familiar with the spreadsheet that currently only exists on my Google Drive and the random number generator that has assigned this particular, how long is this clip? A minute-long clip to 6050 BC.
I just want to point out, and I said this in the preamble, like, of all the clips you could start me off on, just Day of the Doctor.
Yeah.
I know I said it, I'm saying it again, you could have just softballed me into another episode, but no, we're going for the ultimate... yep, let's do this.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
I do have the question, because this is the Day of the Doctor, and of course we're still in the BC era. Are there days yet? Like, have we decided what day it is?
I will refer you to episode. Hang on a second. Episode, insert whatever episode we did the Runaway Bride in, where the Earth was created. We did see the creation of the Earth way back in podcast episode 5, I believe it was.
But the concept of a day.
There are days.
Sorry to interrupt, but it just struck me. What day is the Day of the Doctor? Is it a Tuesday? We don't know. Tuesday's not been invented yet.
Oh my gosh! Wait, when was the 7-day week invented? I have to.
Right?
Yeah.
Origin. Yes, a lot of this podcast is me just Googling random things.
Granted, if this is pre-weekdays, that would kind of make it the Day of the Doctor, because it's the day of nothing else. It is just we don't name days, and then today something happened. A guy hung out with himself, and not just the one time that it was Tennant and Davison, but actually multiple of them are hanging out now.
The notable factor of it is doctors.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, here we go. I have this. First of all, ancient cultures had different week lengths, including a 10-day week in Egypt and an 8-day week for Etruscans. The Etruscan week was then adopted by the ancient Romans, but they later moved on to a 7-day week, which had spread across Western Asia and the Eastern Mediterranean due to the influence of the Christian 7-day week, which is rooted in the Jewish 7-day week. And in 321 AD, Emperor Constantine officially decreed a 7-day week in the Roman Empire.
Not that guy.
I know. So yes, weekdays and weekends have no meaning yet in the history of... So depends. It depends on whether you're in ancient Rome or ancient Egypt or Etruscany. I don't know where Etruria is apparently the place. And this is all information that I've gotten from the Wikipedia page for week.
Gotta say, I know for a fact it is not a Monday or a Friday, because doctors don't work those days, which has made it very hard to schedule any of my appointments.
I'm so sorry.
I'm just laughing at the idea. It's a Doctor Who calendar, and there's nothing except for on one page, a single square that's like, Day of the Doctor. That's it. There's one. There's nothing else on it. No numbers, no nothing.
It's a bunch of boxes, most of which say "not the Day of the Doctor," and then one of them somewhere says "Day of the Doctor." Yeah, so we're discussing specifically I believe it is the last minute of Day of the Doctor, which features Matt Smith doing sort of an internal monologue situation as he walks out and stands next to all of his other incarnations.
I have a new destination. My journey is the same as yours, the same as anyone's.
Well, he stands to the back of all of his other companions, and only David Tennant turns around because they do not want to acknowledge that David Tennant's who's on set, and then a bunch of body doubles.
And then they did not want to mention that, for example, Christopher Eccleston is a still photograph in this.
Oh, a bunch of them are.
Yeah.
Okay, actually, I don't want to focus on the visual effects. I mean, to pick apart visual inconsistencies and memery in Doctor Who is a full profession unto itself. And we have the Green Death next episode. Oh boy, we're going to have fun with that. But I love this scene because it is quintessential of one of the reasons why Doctor Who is genuinely good, why it is genuinely brilliant. And it is this kind of sci-fi yes and philosophy, and you'll know it far better than I. I don't know if it was something was adopted in what I will still choose to call New Who from Mr. Eccleston onwards. But it is all of the old Doctors, no matter how cheesy they were or how weird they were, and they've gone yes and. You see them all there in their full style. None of them have been Hollywoodified or their attire changed. And that scene of all the Doctors together, seeing all the generations acknowledged simultaneously, I still think is the perfect little pinprick of why it's a brilliant series. Sorry to get arty-farty on it already, but I've been thinking about this since I rewatched it.
Yeah, that is true. I think, one of the reasons that I love Doctor Who and that we Who fans love Doctor Who is that, it acknowledges its roots and its evolution throughout the years without being all up its own ass about continuity.
Yeah.
It does kind of just take what it wants, and it will ignore what it doesn't want to acknowledge for a bit, and not completely, not forever. That was a big thing when Davies was coming back, and everyone was like, "Oh, they're gonna just undo all the Chibnall stuff. They're not gonna do it." And it was like, and he aggressily yes-anded it.
Yeah,
because it's
thing.
Oh, I don't care if
first
it's bad.
shooty
It's
episode, he
do.
was like, "I'm adopted. Fuck you, haters."
Absolutely, and that scene is just so perfect in that regard. I also love how Billie Piper is brought back for the whole episode as kind of like the quasi narrator, the I want to say trickster god type, but
yeah,
I always think back to, because Eccleston's run is one of my favorite, and I weirdly obsess on it. And one of the things that stays with me is that if you didn't grow up in the UK, you wouldn't have known that Billie Piper was a pop star.
Right.
I had to
wild that she was in Who.
I had to go back because I don't know if I still have it, but I had a copy of Pokemon the first movie soundtrack, and when Ben just happened to mention, "Oh, she's in it," and I was like, "No, she's not," and then I had to check in the back. I'm like, "Fuck, she is."
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And so the pairing of her and Eccleston off the bat was so batshit wild, because Eccleston, known for serious deadpan roles, predominantly in dramas and stuff. There's one where he played Third Jesus in the Midlands. Still think about that one. And then you had Billie Piper, who was known for being a pop star. And it's not that Who hadn't had people from disciplines across the UK before, but this at the same time as a revitalization really stuck. And in this episode, she gets to have fun with the bad wolf concept. I fucking love it.
Yeah, it's great. And I do love that her in that character is so different from Rose in a subtle enough way that the difference is very clear, but it's not like an over the top thing. And I think that just that speaks so clearly to her skill as an actor of just she has this ability to just kind of be I can kind of do anything. And such a great foil for the War Doctor to like have this fun, it's like semi-chaotic girl hanging around him. Like, you know, like I just thought
He's
that was
there.
so
He wants to
great.
do his like staring off into the distance and like, oh, I must make a noble sacrifice, and then she's just fucking with him. Why can't the ultimate doomsday weapon also be a cute footstool? Sorry, a cute.
Yeah.
I mean, Will, you also understand as a fellow lover of anime that's exactly what I want. The doomsday weapon should always be adorable.
Yeah. The little, I put a big red button on it. I thought you'd like that. Cracks me up. Cracks me up.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And I think that's also like, that's such a great thing that Moffat did throughout the script for this episode, is just like the way that he is like, yes, this is serious, and you know, we're talking about genocide, but that doesn't mean we can't have fun too. Like, it's so good. And just like the scene with the three of them in the woods, like, you know, meeting for the first time is just it's delightful.
It's so well pronounced because the youngest looking one of them is technically the oldest of the three of them.
Right, yeah.
Just to throw it for a loop.
And we've talked about that on the podcast before, of like, a lot of times when they do multi-doctor stories,
it is always so like reverential and like respectful of just who is the older one, and be like, no, you're dumb,
whoever
baby.
the oldest actor on set is, and it's like, no, that's not. No, William Hartnell's doctor is not an old man. He might think he's an old man,
baby.
But like, yeah.
Barely a teenager in Whovian years.
Exactly.
I am so mad that Galley is done, because that someone remind me next Galley that should be my ribbon of just a picture of the first Doctor. It says "Big Stupid Baby."
Just
would be perfect.
Just an image of William Hartnell just in a diaper, just like.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I love this a lot.
This is an interesting one because, like, literally the scene we're talking about is the whole crux of the episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Matt Smith is Matt Smith, right? Yes, sorry, I sometimes get the names all scrambled, but Matt Smith walking into that pantheon of doctors, he is the oldest one there. Yeah.
Which is also fitting because in Stitches in Time, he's also the first Doctor. This was something that Ben insisted we do, is renumber all the Doctors.
Oh, yes, because you'll need to number them chronologically, not in drop order.
Right,
I do
exactly.
need to ask Becca, because we have had, as we have acknowledged, a lot of the Doctors, because of the Zoom episodes, the Zoom recording bits that I can no longer remember the name of because I'm trying to block it out of my memory piece by piece. A lot of the originators of roles are various voice duos, and now the second originator of the role is still image of actor.
I mean, to be fair, that was also true in the Zoom episodes, because they did have like a photo of John Pertwee as John Pertwee. But this is I believe, I'm gonna double check my notes here, but yeah, this is actually the first appearance of John Hurt in the role. He is, of course, playing what's commonly known as the War Doctor, a role that was originated by hang on Jonathan Carley played the original War Doctor, but I think John Hurt is doing a fantastic job. He really looks the part.
He's really nailing that voice. I gotta say, it's a difficult voice for him to cover.
Yeah. So so this is the people on set for this scene were, of course, Matt Smith, the first Doctor, David Tennant, the second Doctor, and John Hurt, the 28th Doctor.
I always want to call him the Hurt Locker, and I don't know why, because I've heard he's a lovely man. I don't know why. Anytime someone's like, yeah, John Hurt, yeah, they call him the Hurt Locker. Why? I don't have a good enough pun for it yet, but when I do...
Look, a good pun takes time. That's...
However, I started calculating this pun 400 years ago. It's not done yet.
Oh my goodness.
I will say, Day the Doctor does scramble my brain a little bit because, and here's the thing I didn't think you would expect any guest to bring up, and that is Homestuck. Introduced me to the concept of paradox clones, and the whole thing around that breaks my brain. Because it's the idea that you can start processing something right now, but technically in the past, so it's instantaneously done. But it also means that in the event of like the Dalek invasion, there's technically infinite Daleks attacking Gallifrey. In a strange way, because if they're pulling the resources from different moments in time, they can loop back to essentially create paradox clones of themselves, which is how I choose to believe that Gallifrey falls. Yeah. Because Dave Strider did this very same thing in Homestuck. Yeah.
I am so happy to not be the one that brought up Homestuck this time.
Wait, so Mandy brought it up before me?
Mandy has brought it up, I think, twice.
That was going to be my Stitches in Time thing. Like, did you hear the episode with Will? He brought up Homestuck.
Literally every time that a doctor has been around another doctor, or they did the whole meeting, this like the 5 minutes later Amy and how she wanted to like sleep with herself, I was going to talk about Homestuck.
I had
to talk about Carcat.
I was not a Homestuck person, so this is all gibberish to me, but
I'm sorry you're being
flanked
on two sides at this point.
That's all right.
Though, because like I read Homestuck. I did not read all of it. I fell out like the latter half. Like once it started getting like really delayed between updates, I kind of fell off. But I never understood the story. I read it religiously, could not tell you a thing that was going on. So I'm glad that Will is here to actually like have plot details that I think I was there for. I feel like I know what you're talking about, and yet,
well, so
similar to how I feel about Doctor Who, to be honest.
It's because you watched it in the wrong order, and we're changing that now.
Should have watched it chronologically. Well, and this is the only bit that I'll reference. I promise we'll get back to Whovian nonsense, is that the whole crux with Homestuck is that there's kind of two stories going on simultaneously. But one of the interesting things is you have the story of 4 kids who start a video game that destroys the world. And you have the story of a bunch of trolls who are watching those kids, but they're watching it on a timeline that they're scrubbing back and forth to find details. And from their perspective, they're looking at these events in the same way trying to find an exact moment on a 24-hour YouTube video is. So the trolls talk to the kids in this broken, disconnected way, which doesn't make sense. And then the trolls, when you see from their perspective, the kids are idiots and they can't find out where things are happening. And it's done to a much better degree with the first Weeping Angels setup. Because he's sending videos from the past, knowing what's going to happen, trying to remember it, but is reliant on them watching the video at particular times.
Right.
Creating the disconnection between, like, observing the same events in 2 different time styles.
What I am hearing is that everyone was really big on Super Wholock, and they were missing out on Dr. Homestuck.
Hi, I'm Dr. Homestuck. No one asked, but I'm here anyway.
All right, I'm going to use this opportunity because, again, we're not going to get to it for, a decade at least, to bring up a little issue I have with Blink.
Let's go.
Which is that we as the audience only, we start by only seeing clips of David Tennant on that video sort of played randomly throughout. And and it's billed as like this sort of big like mystery of like, why is this, and this, there's sort of this online community of people trying to figure this out. But also the scene where they finally like have the full conversation, he explains everything about what he's doing there and like what has happened. He's like, yes, these are what weeping angels are, these creatures who like look like statues, but if you're not looking at them, then they can zap you back in time. That's what happened to us, and that's why we're stuck in 1969, and you have to get me my time machine, which is a blue box shaped like an old telephone box, and just like, and then you have people on the internet being like, what does he mean the angels have the phone box? Like, this is blowing my mind.
Oh,
it's just, it's very silly. I love that episode to death, but this is also why it's good to not think about any particular episode of Doctor Who too hard. Like,
yes. You stare into that swirling abyss and only madness there lies.
Which, again, Will, you talked a lot about how you really feel like with Day of the Doctor and the way that they are really uphold kind of the way of like classic Who, and they keep it alive. And that's also what they're doing, keeping it alive of, hey, this is meant to be serialized. We were not expecting you to watch it again. Please stop thinking about it too much. We were burning these tapes afterward.
I like the idea that, like, once a season, they all put in an episode just to remind you that, like, it's all wibbly wobbly. That don't focus on it too hard.
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so one of my little like rules that in my, I have this whole methodology of like things that I'm considering canon and how things work, canonized and everything. And the example I love to bring up is The Enemy of the World, which is a delightful Patrick Troughton story. It also is set in quote unquote the future, but they do specify that episode takes place in 2018. And there's a lot of other Doctor Who that takes place in and around 2018 that's like, how come nobody has brought up this salamander, this world leader? Like, where are all those like hovercraft that everybody was driving around in the future? What happened there?
Big Finish audio where it's regular 2018, but also there's a big salamander. The Salamander Chronicles. Hit me up, Big Finish. I got a great new idea for you. We're gonna make bank.
I'd watch the shit out of that. It's just a slice of life drama. Everything is the same, but there's a gigantic fucking salamander in the middle of London. And I don't know if you've ever had a pet lizard. They're so lazy most of the time. It'd just be hanging out with like...
They're just soaking up sun on a giant rock somewhere.
The only destruction would be caused as it chases the one patch of sun around the London area.
Yeah.
Big salamander. We're in.
Anyway, the way that I have decided that can be canon while also the rest of it can be canon is through the use of, and this is also how fans have tried to sort of explain away the unit dating controversy of like, well, the Doctor time travels so much that probably over the course of his involvement in Earth and the universe, like, there will be like new timelines sort of overwritten that like don't get addressed in the one adventure just because it's like, yeah, and then we went and had an adventure in ancient Rome, and then that was stepped on a butterfly or something, and now there's no salamander in 2018.
Well, they also put forward the idea of not time. Again, I'm going to use excuses to talk about Eccleston's run because, hi, I'm the guest and I'm allowed.
Absolutely.
But there's a whole ass episode where, Rose janks her dad out of the way from getting beaten by, I think it was a Morris Minor, and suddenly they're in a bubble outside of time being eaten by time bugs who eat anomalies. There is an outside of time ecosystem.
You saying that they ate the salamander? They ate that salamander.
That's where he went.
I would like to give another theory because, as you have said, what I thought you were going to say, Becca, is that, the Doctor travels in time so much and goes all back and forth, and apparently he has a calendar that only has one day listed as Day of the Doctor. I don't think the Doctor knows what year it is generally.
That's probably true. Yeah.
I mean, you go to enough conventions and you meet everybody and you just you recognize their face, but sometimes you don't remember where from and the name doesn't stick. It'd be the time equivalent of that. You'd be like, well, it looks like a 2018, but I can't remember. It's 2018, I'm sure of it. No, it's not. It's 2037, but all right, mate.
Yeah, it's actually 9026, but it just happens. They really went for a retro thing that year.
It was all the rage.
How many days are we putting in a week this time?
Somewhere between 3 and a billion. I don't know.
That really messes with your calculations.
Yeah. This is also something I've always sort of wondered about, because throughout, it's gotten a little bit more, less strict, but, certainly throughout the classic series, the Doctor would give, a specific age for himself every so often, of, oh, I'm 703 or whatever. And I just wonder how that calculation is being made, because I, as a 36-year-old, occasionally forget, and then I have to do math of okay, this year is 2025, and I was born in, okay, so that minus that, okay, and 36, okay, great.
Big same.
Yeah.
I have an answer for this, too. The Day of the Doctor is the birthday of the Doctor. Every time they go to the Day of the Doctor again, which, as we have seen the Stitches in Time, because we've only gotten 1 minute of this. We have not got the whole time. Every time it's the Day of the Doctor, it's the Doctor's birthday.
I'm happy with that.
That's why they all got to get together for their party.
Yay! Which would make the Doctor, 7 years old? 9?
Something like that, yeah.
No, I not to get onto the higher theory stuff, but the way it always felt was you have time travel nonsense like Looper, where things happen quasi-instantaneously with a bit of sponginess. But ideally, it's a single thread. And then you have your Back to the Future hand wavium and your multiverse is all the rage these days with the younglings.
Sure.
But there's a lot of water metaphors throughout Who, and that's how I always choose to view it, but from a cosmic scale. A change is made here, and it doesn't hit instantaneously, meaning there is the possibility that you can mess with the timeline here, and then jump all the way back, and mess with it again before the ripples of your first fuckery have hit.
Yeah.
Then creating...
Which is also...
That also makes sense in terms of, you have a current, so it's it takes a lot to go against the current. So it's all of time just kind of moving in this way, and you can have a little ripple. You're still going this way.
Yes.
This is also... I'm just going to talk about time travel pet peeves, because I have this pet peeve with Back to the Future, which I have to start by saying Back to the Future is probably my favorite movie trilogy of all time.
Also a fantastic ride. Best trilogy based on a ride, because I went on the ride first, and that means the ride came first. I thought that was just the Universal Studios guy.
Oh,
Doc Brown's the Universal Studios guy.
That's amazing.
Well, I believe we brought up on the podcast that because dinosaurs appear on the ride, that technically Back to the Future, the ride came first, and then...
yes.
Yeah, and then the movies. And then we pepper in some of the animated series in there, probably. But my biggest pet peeve with Back to the Future is that time travel works differently in part 2 than it does in part 1.
Because he upgraded the engine. It's a different engine, different time travel.
He upgraded the concept of time. It's just, yeah. But
He
like,
just built time around the engine. It was cheaper.
Because I think that like in part one, you have time travel basically of what you said, of like you can go and mess with something and then it takes some time for it takes a while for the ripples to happen, which is why like the his hand is like slowly disappearing, or like his siblings in the photographs are disappearing. And then in part two, it's like, nope, a different timeline was instantly created, and we're all fucked. Like,
see, I figured that was something of like, because he's going, like, starting in the future and going back.
Well, so the other thing is that in part one, there's only one timeline, and the timeline could get changed, but the whole timeline just exists as just all on its own. In the second movie, Doc draws that diagram on the chalkboard showing that there are now two different timelines, but like if there hadn't been, then like I feel like should be disappearing because they're from the first timeline, which theoretically no longer exists, except it must because they are still intact. So somewhere that timeline is intact, but it's no longer accessible. So that's why they have to go back to 1955 to set it back on the correct course.
And that's why in the third one, they have to Tokyo drift the timelines.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's why they use a train, because it can hit both tracks.
Yeah.
A lot of people know that.
Yeah.
Solve that trolley problem real quick.
To go off on a wild tangent, one of my favorite tabletop books.
Unacceptable. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's cool.
This is a Doctor Who podcast. We've been talking about nothing but Doctor Who for the last 20 minutes.
It's Who or nothing. One of my favorite tabletop systems.
So anyway, in Doctor Who, Martin McFly.
Although technically, most of this stuff does canonically come together, because Doctor Who is technically part of the Marvel canon, I believe, and then it gets wobbly from there. There's a crossover
the
comic.
Show Ben Paddon can also go into that. I think that they've broken it out, if my understanding is correct. And Ben, if you are listening and I am saying it wrong, you can send a correction via 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. But I'm pretty sure that the Doctor can canonically meet Donkey Kong.
Yes. I remember the Ben story. I remember I was also very drunk when they told me. We'll have to come back.
We're all very drunk. That's how we listen to Benjamin.
Next time they're on the podcast, I will ask them to elaborate on the 5-star review that they will now have written by way of explaining. But I know the character counts on those are sometimes limited, so
But what I wanted to throw in was one of my favorite tabletop systems is Magic. It's the Ascension. I forget. One of the Vampire the Masquerade.
The Gathering.
It's all these little cards. You'd love it. But with Mage, sorry, I said Magic instead of Mage. With Mage, the idea is that reality is really spongy, and that Magic is basically hoodwinking reality into letting you do stuff. Like you're pushing against a rubber wall. If you push against it gently comes back. If you smack it, it smacks you back. And I've always felt the Whovian time philosophy is very similar, because there's so many analogies to water and entities that either feed on or exist in and around the concept of time. It feels more organic and more spongy. You know, and a lot of times, if you work with the flow of time, it seems to go well. And if you feck with the flow of time, it slaps you back.
Yeah, I think that one of my favorite Bill Potts quotes when she says, what's time made of? And he's like, what? He's like, well, if you can travel through it, it must be made of stuff, right?
I've always assumed something akin to the Haribo gummy bears. Don't ask me why.
That feels right. Yeah. Certainly the smell is the same.
Very much.
pots and her 3 weed-smoking girlfriends. Peter Capaldi, Nardole, third thing,
The TARDIS.
Have at any point you're ranked, like, who could outsmoke who on the Doctor's ranking? Because I think that's one worth discussing.
Ooh.
I reckon Capaldi's definitely a contender.
Yeah, Pete's got him.
Yeah.
Not the.
Yeah.
I don't know the middle, but I know top is Pete and bottom is Pete. Pete Davidson cannot smoke anything.
No.
Jodie
would be a surprise contender.
He sees a weed, he's on the ground.
Yeah, I feel like Jodie would be higher than you would like initially think, maybe.
See Jodie beast 3 edibles and go, what's next? As everyone looks on horrified.
But if she has 4, then it gets a little scary.
I think Tom Baker is just under Peter Capaldi. I think he's number 2. But like, in a way that like he smokes a lot and says like, yeah, no, this is just what I experience all the time. What do you mean? What do you mean drugs?
Tom Baker, smoke weed every day.
I think Tom Baker was smoking weed.
I
think that explains a lot of his face.
Because at the end of Day of the Doctor, it's the, I could be a curator, I'd be a great curator. And there he is, old Tommy Bakesby, showing up.
Yeah.
And he is Tommy Baked, in my humble opinion.
Yes.
Now, obviously, we're not implying that he's genuinely stoned, as, you know, weed is illegal in the United Kingdom. We would never imply a doctor would do anything illegal.
Of course.
As it was when they were filming this in the, in here time. Only in our states is okay.
Yeah.
Don't listen to this episode in a state where weed is illegal. You can go to jail.
And if Tom Baker passes you a blunt, don't inhale.
Ask your doctor about a medical card so you can listen 2 Stitches in Time.
Whereas I think, like, Colin Baker should smoke a lot more weed than he does.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think old Colin Baker smoked, like, when we see him at,
with the goatee and everything.
Yeah, and the memory TARDIS. Like, when he's just a guy chilling, that is a guy who has gotten really into brownies.
Yes.
Like, he makes his own, his own, like, weed butter and has gotten, like, really into doing stuff. And that's why he's so much calmer. That's why he doesn't want to choke Perry out anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, not in a bad way, but I would say that Shooty is probably on the lighter scale, but is the funniest, giggliest Doctor when high.
Yes.
That would be, I would put that in there.
Yeah. I'm gonna say John Hurt is not when we see him, but like after the Time War is like blazing it 24/7 specifically to forget all of the
it's really good for PTSD.
He's full Yoda. Like, he is just baked out of his skull in a little shack in time somewhere.
Colin Baker makes some little CBD balms. Like, I think your knees hurt because of the war.
I like this headcanon.
Oh. It's just, like I was saying in the beginning, it's such a weird moment to jump in on with Day of the Doctor, because the bit of them all hanging out, like, that is some kind of place outside of space-time. So all of this getting baked in time theory kind of feels like it's applicable, because, again, you were saying, like, don't think about it too hard, because if you stop and think, where in the universe are they?
Well, so I have labeled this in the edit as inside the Doctor's mind, because I feel like that was just like further proven when The Power of the Doctor came out and we saw Jodie hanging out with all of her old selves next to that cliff. And I'm I feel like this is...
There are 2 versions of what this means in the Stitches in Time context. Either which is very sad, but I have lived this life like during the pandemic, especially, and kind of work from home, where you take so many Zoom meetings that you're dreaming in Zoom meetings now. All of your dreams just happen. Like he's in the Zoom meeting, but in the dream. Alternatively, they all ate their phones and then figured out how to mind Zoom.
Contact. Yeah.
Because, like, the other path down this route, very similar to Legion, the TV show, is that did he just use the TARDIS to go into the space inside of his own mind? In which case, I'm not nearly high enough for that conversation.
Yeah, why didn't we smoke several blunts before this episode? I don't
know. All I had was regular tea.
I have a confession. There was maybe something that I squizzed into this off-brand cherry cola. So
that was smart.
I'm really the Tom Baker today.
Who would have known that you were actually the
recording.
most prepared of the three of us to have this conversation?
I'm about to say, I'd go stuff my cheeks full of edibles, but that wouldn't kick in until after recording, and I'd just be like a little puddled potato here, being like, oh yes, I've talked about the doctors. That was amazing.
You don't want to prep for the Green Death?
Oh no. I have so many feelings about the Green Death.
You know what? If ever there was a doctor who needed to smoke a blunt once in a while, I guess John Pertwee.
Yeah, oh boy. I even just a little snifter of whiskey would have helped.
I think John Pertwee does cocaine.
John Pertwee's doctor absolutely does a fat line. And we will talk about this in the next episode.
I have to be clear. I have not seen any, because of the way that it works, I will see almost no John Pertwee in the Stitches in Time run because it will take us so long to get to the 70s and the 60s.
Yeah.
So I've seen very little John Pertwee, but everything that I've seen is like, that man is on cocaine.
And then we're just going to do like a full ass year of John Pertwee episodes. It's going to be wild.
The whole opening, sans the guy being covered in the aforementioned Green Death, is him talking at high speed to his assistant and not listening to her at all. And if that doesn't scream executive bloke who just did a fat line in the toilets telling you his movie idea, I don't know what does!
Oh my gosh. Well, since we are already moving on to the next episode, I think this might be a good place to wrap up this one. Oh wait, I did want to mention, because we've had also a discussion about, so in Stitches in Time, we talked about this when we talked about Castrovalva the last time.
Castrovalva, say it right.
I'm so sorry. Let me take that again. I'll say Castrovalva. All right, I'll edit that in later. So there's a scene in The Power of the Doctor where we go into Sacha Dhawan as the Doctor is sitting on that asteroid playing his recorder, and then we go into his mind. And then, like, allegedly we come out of his mind, but there is also a Stitches in Time fan theory that everything that we're seeing is taking place inside Sacha Dhawan's mind. And then in Castrovalva,
he's just still tooting on there.
He's just tooting away. But then in Castrovalva, we learn that the entire castle of Castrovalva is being created by Adric's mind. So now we're in like Adric's dream within Sacha Dhawan's dream. And now we seem to be inside Matt Smith's, like inside what Sacha Dhawan would think Adric would think Matt Smith would be dreaming about.
Yeah, I made the mistake of doing this episode sober.
Super Hulock is dead. It is all about Dr. Homestuckception. Dr. Homeception.
Dr. Homeception? Wait, no, hang on. That goes weird places. That is a travelling fertility specialist I wish never to meet.
Coming to you soon on AO3. You're not gonna like Who Kisses.
Please tell me that's the subtitle for AO3. Like, because it needs to be.
You're not gonna like Who Kisses.
I mean, it's the title of this episode of the podcast now. I'll tell you that much.
But I mean, which is going to be a great thing for people to see. You're not going to like who kisses the day of the Doctor.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What a great time. Will, if people were listening to this episode and said, this Will guy seems great, I would like to follow him on the internet somewhere, where would you suggest people could do that and learn about things that you do?
If for some bizarre reason your lovely viewership have decided to hear my incoherent ramblings about predominantly video games, I am under the unfortunate moniker of Viking Blonde on Twitch. That's the best place to either come hear more nonsense from me or yell at me for the desecration I've committed on this here
Yelling
Whovian
you
podcast.
in the form of money sent via Twitch. If you would like to yell at Will, please send money via the way that Twitch receives money that I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
It is literally
Bits,
what keeps me alive.
paces.
It is bits. Paces, that's for dueling.
Will, if people really like listening to you on this podcast, but they wish that they were listening to you in the form of a racing game that also had Sonic the Hedgehog, where could people do that?
God damn. I thought we'd get to the whole episode without bringing this up. We mentioned like the crossovers and things like that. I was like, let's not talk about the Sonic thing. Let's not talk about... Technically, my other tangential link to a very different fandom is that I was the voice of Willimus the Roman in Sonic All-Star Racing Transformed. That is my claim to fame.
That's where I recognize you from. Okay, that makes sense.
Being Sonic's best friend.
I mean, trying to run the little blue bastard down with a sword in hand is more accurate, but yes, I'm technically in the and friends bracket.
Wait, Will, is that not how you make friends with people? I have left a bloody trail of friends in my wake. Okay. Oh, gosh. Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us, Will. And
it has been a joy and a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I hope you'll join us next week when we discuss, drumroll please, because this is a complete surprise that has not been brought up on this episode at all.
Not at all.
The Green Death.
I'm so ready. I'm so ready. You don't even know.
Well, you'll have to wait an entire week to tell us how you feel. You won't really. We're about to record it right now, but I don't want the listeners to feel like we know things that they don't. Wait.
Absolutely not.
All right. That was a podcast outro. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, all.
Thanks for listening to Stitches in Time. Music by Becca, the Matrix Archivist. Art by Mandy Oquendo. Logo by Ben Paddon. Find us on the web at www.stitchesintie.me. Stitches in Time, but with a dot in the middle of the word time.
Yeah. I mean, we had the thing where we were trying to count together, which is the most jarring thing because you can hear the echo while you're trying to count.
Yup.
Yeah.
And it took us like 4 recordings to realize that we could mute everybody else or take our headphones off.
Yeah. Well, it was based on because I used to work at a news station, and that's how they would figure out for reporters in the field what the delay was ahead of the live broadcast so that they could cue them at the right time, basically. So that it wouldn't have that awkward, actual live newscast thing where and Jerry's joining us on satellite. What do things look like there, Jerry?
Bad.
Tom, it's what?
I miss those days.
Clara sometimes asks me if I dream. Of course I dream, I tell her. Everybody dreams.
This is the first time in a while that I saw the clip and I had my intro ready to go as soon as I saw it.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
But what do you dream about, she'll ask. Same thing everybody dreams about, I tell her. I dream about where I'm going.
And I'm just gonna pull some things up on my spreadsheet in case I have to reference it instead of being a messy bitch like usual. Yeah, you'd never know how messy of a bitch I am by listening to the podcast. Yes, you absolutely fucking would. All right.
She always laughs at that. But you're not going anywhere, you're just wandering about. That's not true. Not anymore.
Oh, you know what? The other thing that would help me is if I had sitting in front of me the bio that you so lovingly wrote out for me.
Which I may have written in a quasi-manic state, so we're just going to roll with it.
Great. Again, this podcast is heavily scripted, so I don't know what... I don't know how I'm supposed to work under these conditions.
This entire exercise was due to a 12-year-long manic state.
It's true.
A manic decade has a really nice ring to it.
Yeah, I feel like I've had 3.5 manic decades in a row, and I'm it doesn't seem to be letting up. All right, here we go.
But at last I know where I'm going. Where I've always been going. Home. The long way round.
And this is the only bit that I'll reference. I promise we'll get back to Whovian nonsense. Is that the whole crux with Homestuck is that there's kind of two stories going on simultaneously. One is about...
I just want to mention, please don't feel the need to rush through your information in order to get back to Doctor Who, because this podcast is mostly tangents, and
We had a minute to talk about.
Yeah, we have 60 whole seconds of, and this doesn't necessarily have the wealth of content that, say, a minute of Star Wars from Star Wars Minute might have.
Well, I was about to say that I'll get my blanket, I'll get my second cup of tea, I'll bring it together.
Yes.
I don't know what's happening.
Ben, I can hear myself in the other room.
Actually, the reason I'm here, I just have one quick question for you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. We just didn't know.
Is that your one quick question?
To.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Question for Becca. Were you talking about the enemy of the world earlier, or?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, because Mandy mentioned a big salamander, and I guess she thought it was a literal giant salamander.
Yeah, I did nothing to disabuse her of that notion, and I'm so excited to see how disappointed she is when we get to that story. And she will totally remember this conversation.
It's not a big salamander?
It's not.
It is now. Canon just changed. We already contacted production company. It's happening.
It's a big salamander now.
It's on the special edition DVD.
Becca, I know that we're just recording the second episode, but I'm going to need you to put this out as a correction of I have been betrayed.
Look, if I remember to, this will be a post-credits thing on the episode we just recorded.
Brilliant.
And Ben, in the future, if you would like to send corrections, you can do so in the form of a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
Perfect.
And that's true for anyone who, if you have a correction for the podcast, please send in the form of a 5-star review.